Hello everyone, and welcome to the third episode of our NF Core training, Running an NF Core Pipeline. In the previous episode, we discussed some Nextflow topics you'll need to understand the next two episodes, specifically about things like processes and channels and how they are connected and make up workflows. And in this section, we're going to have a couple of things that you're going to be learning by the end of the episode. Specifically, by the end of this episode, you should be able to find an NF Core pipeline using NF Core's website or NF Core Tools, which is a command line tool we'll go over. You should be able to run an NF Core pipeline on the command line, and you should be able to define what a configuration profile is and use the test configuration profile of an NF Core pipeline to run and test that pipeline. Let's start by going over how you can find NF Core pipelines. There are two ways you can do this. The first is online, and the second is on the command line. So we're going to start with online first. I'm going to open up this browser window, and I'm going to go to NF Core's website, which is nf-core.re. And you can see here that it's auto-populated. And this is NF Core's websites. There's a lot going on here, but the thing we care about are pipelines. There is also a little button here for viewing pipelines, so let's go ahead and click on that. And this takes you to the pipeline page. As you can see here, there are 82 that are released as of filming this. There are 39 under development and 12 that are archived. It also says that there's 133 here that are currently available as part of NF Core. So that's the total here. Let's start with the demo pipeline. That's going to be the pipeline we're going to go over first. So in the search bar, I'm going to type in demo. It's a simple NF Core style bioinformatics pipeline for workshops like this and demos. So let's go ahead and click on it. This takes us to NF Core demos page. There's a couple of useful things here, all organized in tabs. Here we have the introduction, which tells you what the pipeline does in a brief description. And it also has information that you can scroll down and see here. But this next tab we're going to go over is usage. So the usage tab tells you how you can actually run the pipeline and use it. Specifically with this input here, this parameter here called input. We also have things about doing multiple runs of samples, what the sample sheet should look like, and what the columns and descriptions of the things in that sample sheet are, as well as the actual command for running the pipeline with Nextflow, which we're going to go over here in a bit. Now we're going to scroll back up and take a look at the parameters tab next. So the parameters tab shows every parameter that is either optional or necessary to run the pipeline. The one we care the most about is input, followed by outdir. So we have the parameters listed here, what the description of that parameter is, and then what type of parameter it is, and the pattern of the extension associated with it, and whether or not it's required. The input parameter --input is a path to a comma-separated file containing information about the samples in the experiment. It is a string, and its pattern is a .csv, so it's a CSV file. This is a sample sheet if you're familiar with Nextflow and NF Core sample sheets. The outdir parameter is the other parameter we care about. This is the name of the output directory where results will be saved. It is also required, and it's typed as a string. So this is just a directory. It does not have an extension associated with it, like the input parameter does. We're not going to go over the rest of these parameters as they are not required and are outside the scope of this lesson. Let's go ahead and move on to the next tab, which is output. The output tab shows you everything you need to know about the output of the pipeline. Here we have an overview of the directories that will be in the pipeline's results folder, specified by outdir. We have FastQC data, SeqTK data, multi-QC data, and then pipeline information. So these are all folders you're going to be able to find in your output directory. It also has a description of what the tools are associated with it, and you can actually click on this button here, and it will show you what the name of the directory is, as well as the extension of what those files are and what those files are. So in the SeqTK output folder, which is FQ, / we have files that end with .fastq.gz, and they are trimmed fastq files. You can actually click on an example results folder, and this is powered by AWS. So like I just said, in the seqtk results, we'll have a folder called FQ. We can click on that, and we can see that there is a folder for each individual sample that's been processed by this pipeline. We can click again, and we'll see here are the .fastq.gz files that will be in the output directory associated with this step. And just to show you this example again, we'll click on results and we'll pick a different tool. This time we're going to go with FastQC, which is a FastQ QC program. If I click on that, we see again individual subdirectories that are named for each sample. So if I click on sample 1 here, you can see that we have these HTML files from the FastQC output associated with read 1 and read 2 of sample 1. Now the final tab is the releases tab. This is where you can find the version history of a pipeline. So if you want to know about each version of the pipeline and what's changed between versions, you can find that here. Other useful things you can find on a pipeline's page are how to run the command with either NFCore commands, Nextflow commands, or on the Sakara platform, if you're familiar with that platform. It has a list of its included modules summarized here, as well as sub-workflows. We haven't discussed sub-workflows yet, and we will not be discussing sub-workflows as a part of this lesson plan, but we do hope to have future trainings in which we discuss sub-workflows, which are an important part of NFCore pipelines. The other two useful things here are this button here, which will allow you to ask a question about this pipeline on Slack if you have a Slack account. And you can also open an issue on GitHub because every single NFCore pipeline has a GitHub repository associated with it. This is just the issue page, but I can click on demo here and it will take me to the NFCore pipelines GitHub page. So let's go ahead and go back to the demo page. And we'll go here to introduction. And even as you can see right here, there's also a link to the GitHub page here that you could click on if you wanted to. So that is how you find a pipeline online. Next, we're going to go over finding it on the command line tool. Now, the command line tool you use to find an NFCore pipeline via the command line is called NFCore tools. I'm going to go back to my terminal. And you can see we have a blank terminal here. So to just call NFCore tools, which you should have installed prior to starting this webinar. If you have not installed it yet, please go install it now. But to call NFCore tools, we type in nf-core space and then --help. Let's go ahead and click enter. And as you can see, this is the output you will initially see every time you use an NFCore tool. It'll list the tool here, the version, and then it'll give you a link to NFCore's website. It has its usage, and then a description of what the tool does. There's a number of individual subcommands associated with NFCore tools: pipelines, modules, sub-workflows, test data sets, and interface. There's also options, so what version you want, whether or not you want the output to be verbose, and things like hiding progress, saving the verbose log to a file, and then of course what we just used, --help. So now we're going to list all of the pipelines NFCore has available for us to use and download using the pipelines command listed here. And notice this says for commands to manage NFCore pipelines. And the particular sub command we're going to use is called list. So we're going to type in nf-core pipelines, not pipeline, plural pipelines, and then list and hit enter. Now this is a lot of output because, like we saw a second ago, there's 133 pipelines that NFCore has available. We have our pipeline here in the leftmost column, followed by stars, which is how many favorites it has essentially. We have the latest release of the pipeline, when that release was, and then we have two blank columns here, and these are blank for us because we have not downloaded any of these pipelines, which is what the hyphen stands for. So the last pulled column is the last time we pulled a version of it. And then this is whether or not we have the latest release. Now, the pipeline we're going to be using, like I said, is called demo. And we are going to pull not the most recent version, which is 1.0.1. We're going to pull 1.0.0. And the reason we're going to do this is because I've tried to run 1.0.1 and there's actually an error that it throws that would make it unable for us to use at this point. So we're going to pull an earlier version, which does work. To pull an NF-core pipeline, we need to use the Nextflow command pull. And again, this is a Nextflow command and not an NF-core command. So we're going to type in Nextflow and then pull. And now we're going to type in the name of the pipeline, which in this case is nf-core/demo. And then we're going to specify the version or release using the -r flag. And our release that we're going to pull is 1.0.0. And then we need to click enter. Now it says it's checking and then it's downloaded. So now we have that this pipeline has been pulled from this GitHub repository. Now if we run NF-core pipelines list again, and then scroll all the way back up to the top to demo, we can see now that we have that it's last pulled 15 seconds ago, and that yes, we do have it pulled, but it is not the latest release. This is our version here, 1.0.0, and the latest release is 1.0.1. So scrolling all the way back down, we are now going to try and run NF-core demo. And to do that, we need to use the Nextflow run command. So we're going to start by typing in Nextflow and then run, and we need to type in the pipeline next, which is nf-core/demo. And we are going to specify the release version again. We're going to do -r and then type in 1.0.0. And then we're going to click enter. We're going to wait for it to run. And notice here that there's an error immediately. That is purposeful. We're going to discuss this error. But let's scroll up a bit. And if you see this, just note that it's just Nextflow telling you that there's a new version available and to consider downloading it. My version is 25.04.2, but 25.04.4 is available. Notice here is some important information about the pipeline we're running. We have it here that it's demo, and we have the version associated with it, the revision, the run name, which is randomly populated unless you specify it, the launch directory, which is my home directory, the working directory, which is found in the directory I launched it from with the directory work, the project directory, my username, and then the profile and whether or not there's a configuration profile I used. Notice it also says here, only displaying parameters that differ from the pipeline defaults. I did not specify input parameters, which is why I got this error, but if I had specified parameters that were different from the default, it would show them here. And then it also shows us where we can find the NF-core framework information, as well as the software dependencies for this particular pipeline. Let's move on to this error. The error says, error, validation of pipeline parameters failed. Check .nextflow.log file for details, and the following invalid input values have been detected. Missing required parameter, --input, and missing required parameter, --outdir. We don't need to check the script at this line. If we were doing a more intense debugging where there was kind of a less clear error, we would want to be checking this nextflow.log file, but the error is pretty clear here, which is that we are missing required parameters input and outdir, which were listed as required on the web page I showed you a couple moments ago. So this time we're going to specify an input and an outdir. But rather than give the pipeline a custom sample sheet and custom samples, which we could do if we wanted to, we're going to use something called a test profile to run this demo pipeline. A test profile is something called a Nextflow profile, which contains settings that tell Nextflow how you want to run the pipeline. And these settings are set in a configuration profile. All NF Core pipelines come with a test profile that includes setting that test if the pipeline is working correctly. Datasets for testing the pipeline are also included. The test profile tells Nextflow we want to use the test dataset as input, so we don't have to specify an input parameter. We will still need to tell Nextflow where we want the results to go using the output parameter. So let's go ahead and take a look at this configuration profile. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to NF Core Demo's webpage, and we're going to go into its GitHub repository. Now, to find configuration profiles, you can click on the conf, or conf as I call it, folder. And if we click on that, we'll see a number of config files here, and we're going to go to the test config and click on that. So here we see Nextflow config file for running minimal tests. So we're testing the profile minimally, or excuse me, we're testing the pipeline minimally. And it says defines input files and everything required to run a fast and simple pipeline test. And it has some usage information. So to here, as it says, we can use Nextflow run, the pipeline name, what profile we want to use, and whether or not we're using Docker or Singularity, and then the out directory, which we will still need to specify. It has some minimal information here, such as how many CPUs, memory, and time that are allotted. And then it has the actual params. So we have the profile name, which is test profile. We have its description, which is minimal test data set to check pipeline function. And then we have the input data. And this is a link to where we can find the sample sheet. We can copy this and then input it here. And it will take us directly to what the sample sheet looks like. So rather than copy this, save it as a sample sheet, and then run the pipeline, or even use our own custom input, this is the power of using a test profile, is that we can have this specified and we can run it consistently every time to make sure that the pipeline is working as we expect. So let's close this, and then we're going to go back to all the way to the NF Core demo pipeline page in case we need to pull it back up again. And then we're going to go back to our terminal. So we're going to use Nextflow run again. We're going to specify the pipeline name, nfcore/demo. Then we're going to do the version, -r 1.0.0. And this time we are going to add the profile test. So we need to use -profile test, comma, and whether or not we're using Docker or Singularity. I am using Docker, so I'm going to type in Docker. And then we still need to specify an out directory. So we're going to do --outdir, because that's the parameter we're specifying. And then we're going to type in a directory name, and I'm going to type in results. And this time the pipeline should run as expected. It's going to take some time. Again, we have this information here, and unlike last time, we have input specified. The input is the link to that sample sheet I showed you, and then the outdir is results. Because we used a test profile, it has the configuration profile name and the configuration profile description here that we went over in that file as well. And remember, the configuration profile we used is called test, and when we were in the GitHub repository, it was called test.config. See here, we have the processes that are running. We have the fastqc process, the seekTK trim process, and the multi-QC progress. We can watch their progress here, and once they've finished, you'll see that it's 3 of 3. If it failed or certain ones failed, it would be 0 out of 3, or it would be 2 out of 3. But we have this little check mark here to indicate that it's finished. And then we have this final process here, multi-QC, that's running. So we'll go ahead and wait for it to finish. Oh, and one thing that I didn't explain is that these files are remotely found. It will say staging foreign files. So if your files were local, you would not see this, but because they are stored remotely on GitHub, it says staging foreign file, and then the link to where those samples are found. And the pipeline finished. And now here we see NF Core demo pipeline completed successfully. We see when it was completed, the duration, how many CPU hours it is and how many processes. So if we totaled this up, we see that 3 plus 3 plus 1 is 7. 7 processes finished. Let's go ahead and take a look at this directory. We have our file explorer here, which shows everything, but the folder we care about is the results folder. So we're going to go ahead and go into that folder. And if we do ls to see what's in it, we see that those directories that were explained on the pipeline's webpage on NFCore, we see those files that, those directories that were specified. So we have fastqc, that's where all the results for fastqc are found. fq, that's where all the results for seekdk trim are found. All of the results for multiqc are found in the multiqc directory. And then we also have the pipeline info directory, which will have everything related to the pipeline's run. So if we wanted to see the full layout of this, we can use this command you may or may not be familiar with called tree. And we can do dot for our present directory and click enter. And it will give us a full layout of everything in the present directory as a tree. So again, we have the fastqc directory, all of the files associated with it, and so on and so forth. So if you wanted to get just a quick look at all of the files that were available after you ran an NFCore pipeline, you could use the tree command and then a dot to specify your directory, or you could give it the full path to your directory. So that's everything from running and testing the pipeline. You can now download and run an NFCore pipeline, and you could go find one on the website and look at its inputs and its outputs and what was required for it. You should be able to run it with its test config. I am going to give you a challenge here, which I will go over the results for. So first I want to ask, what 2 commands would you use to, 1, download the NFCore pipeline viral recon version 2.6.0, and then I want you to go ahead and test the NFCore pipeline viral recon with version 2.6.0 using the test profile. You can go ahead and hit pause here if you want to do that yourself and try and complete that challenge. And then I am going to go over the results. So to go ahead and go over this challenge, let's go ahead and use NFCore pipelines list again. And this gave us a list of the pipelines we want. We care about viral recon, and actually it's a little bit hard to find because this list is long. So I'm going to use this nifty little pipe command, and I am going to use grep, which is a command for grabbing things, and I'm going to grab viral recon. And then that gave me what I was looking for, viral recon. As you can see, the latest version is 2.6.0, and we do not have it installed. So we're going to go ahead and install viral recon. So we're going to do Nextflow pull nf-core/viral recon. We're going to specify the version, and that is 2.6. I typed a 1, 2.6.0, and we're going to go ahead and click enter. Now viral recon is downloaded. Let's go ahead and test it. So to do that, we need to do nextflow run and then nf-core viral recon. We're going to specify the version using -r, and that's 2.6.0. And then we are going to use the test profile. So we need to use -profile test docker. And then finally, we need to give it the out directory. And we're going to say viral recon results, because I don't want to overwrite the results folder we just made. And now viral recon is running. It's going to take some time to run this, so I will go ahead and cut this so that you can see that it is finished running. Okay, and we're back. The run of Viral Recon has finally finished. You might notice here that it says cache, and that's because my run got interrupted and I had to restart it using the resume function that Nextflow has. So you'll notice here it says that it took about 8 minutes and 59 seconds. It was actually longer than that because I had to resume it. So if it's taking your run a while, don't worry. But just to recap again, the commands we used to run this were nextflow run nfcore /viral recon, and then we used release 2.26.0, and we used the profile test to run it. Docker, or if you use singularity, singularity. And the results for this can be seen in Viral Recon results. So let's go ahead and use the tree command that I showed you before. So we're going to say Viral Recon results, and it will give us the full output of Viral Recon. As you can see, there are many files here for you to find. And again, just to do another little recap, we'll go to the NFCore website. You can see here that I have the same page pulled up from demo. Let's go to pipelines, and then we're going to type in Viral Recon. Click on it here. And this is an assembly and intrahost low frequency variant calling for viral samples. But anything we wanted to know about it, we could find here in any of these tabs that we already discussed. So if you're curious about what the outputs of this pipeline are, now that we've run it as part of this challenge, you're very welcome to click through these tabs and find out for yourself. That is the end of this episode. To go back to some key points, let me go back to my terminal here. Ready-to-use NFCore pipelines can be found on NFCore's website or by using NFCore Tools Pipelines command with the list option. After you've downloaded an NFCore pipeline using Nextflow Pull, you can test them using Nextflow Run with the test profile. And a profile is a configuration file that contains settings that tell Nextflow how you want to run the pipeline. So now that you know how to run and pull an NFCore pipeline, in the next episode, we are going to talk about how you can make a custom NFCore pipeline yourself. Thank you, and I will see you in the next episode.